Throughout the Civil Rights era, the city of Selma, Alabama was considered by many to be the center of white resistance to the Civil Rights Movement. Blacks there were consistently forced to pass unfair standards in order to vote. This is why it was considered a major target for civil rights groups. This was the backdrop for a planned march led by the SCLC from Selma to Montgomery to appeal to Governor George Wallace. We were watching the day it began, a day now known as Bloody Sunday. The marchers had scarcely begun when they crossed the Edmund Pettit Bridge leading out of Selma. They were met by state troopers on horseback and armed with clubs, as well as a large group led by Sheriff Big Jim Clark. We watched in horror as the state troopers and Clark's posse brutally beat the protesters, clubbing them and throwing tear gas canisters at them. We also saw, 2 days later, when the protesters again tried to march but were stopped at the same bridge. Thankfully, though, this episode ended peacefully. The events of Bloody Sunday had opened the eyes of many Americans to the brutality of segregation.
A week later, District Judge Frank Johnson issued an injunction stopping any local police or state troopers from hindering a third march. 4 days after that, Lyndon Johnson ordered 4,000 National Guard troops to protect the protesters. The following afternoon, we watched as the protesters finally began on the 54-mile march. 4 days later, they marched into Montgomery. The success of the third march encouraged Congress to act on the Voting Rights Act Johnson had sent them, designed to enforce the 15th Amendment. Barely a month after the march, the Senate approved the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The House of Representatives would soon follow, and on August 6th, President Johnson signed it into law.